Hello friends, welcome to Programming Concepts. My name is Amit and this is part 21 of ASP.NET Core MVC tutorial. In this video, we will talk about Dependency Injection. This is continuation to part 20, Controller Model Communication. So please watch it before proceeding to this one. I shared the link in the description. So the first question which we need to answer is, what is dependency in coding world? So let's get back to Visual Studio. And this is the project which we are working on. Here with an index method, I created an object of SQL DBLayer class. That means my index method is dependent on SQL DBLayer class. So this is a dependency. Simple, extremely simple. My index method is dependent on SQL DBLayer class because I created an object of it. So the second question is it a bad thing if one class is dependent on another class? The answer is no. At some point of time, most of your classes will depend on some other classes to make it work, right? Otherwise, we will end up creating a giant class that contains everything in itself, which doesn't sound practical, right? So, as a developer, it is our responsibility to reduce coupling as much as possible. And dependency injection is one of the many attempts towards this. Let's see how we can reduce this tight coupling in our case. Just in case you are not aware of coupling, for now, just think of it as a dependency of one class over another. Alright. So in our case, we assume that our target repository, or you can say data of employees, will always be stored in SQL Server. That's why we created SQL DBLayer class. Now let's assume there is another client whose employee data is stored in SharePoint. Now what? Will your code work? Although this client wants everything similar with respect to UI, flow, notification, etc., everything similar. It just repository where his information is stored is not in SQL Server. It's in SharePoint. Okay, just to begin with, let's create another class and name it SharePoint layer. So let's copy and paste the SQL DBLayer class within the model folder and name it SharePoint layer. And within this class, rename SQL DBLayer to SharePoint layer. Rest, I'm not going to change anything. Let's assume data is coming from SharePoint itself. Now within index method, I want to use SharePoint instead of SQL. So what do I have to do? I have to use SharePoint layer instead of SQL DB layer. Let's do it. Let's rename this class to SharePoint layer class. But you can see the problem still persists. I have to modify my index method, and there can be thousands of controllers or methods in a live project, right? So to overcome a similar situation, the concept of dependency injection evolved, and there are many tools available in the market like NUnit, AutoFac, etc., which is there to help us to implement dependency injection so that we don't have to do everything manually. So with .NET Core, Microsoft decided to give their own dependency injection container to avoid using any other third-party tools. Although still there are many who prefers AutoFac and NUnit over inbuilt dependency injection, leave the question why do they prefer other containers. So let's use the inbuilt dependency injection container in .NET Core. For that, let's inject dependency of iEmployee repository in our employee controller via the constructor. We already injected configuration dependency. Let's remove this. And let's remove the variable declaration as well. Instead, use iEmployee repository and let's name it repository within constructor. And let's declare a variable public iEmployee repository and let's name it underscore repository and assign this local variable within constructor. Now if I run this class, you will get an exception. Let's see that exception. Let's run the program. And here is the error. Unable to resolve service for type proconcepts.models.iEmployee repository. So we only specify the interface, but we haven't told our application if we use this interface, which class it should point to. For this, we need to use an inbuilt dependency injection container. Let's go to startup.cs class. And if you remember, the configure services methods are called by the runtime. Use this method to add services to the container. Let's add our dependency here. Let's type services.add singleton. And then we need to specify the interface we are referencing. In our case, it is iEmployee repository. Let's add namespace. Then a comma, and here we need to specify its implementation. Let's say we need to use SQL DB layer, so we will write its name. And that's it. If you run the program, you will get the output as expected. Let me put a breakpoint just to make sure everything is working as expected. And let's run the program once again. Okay, so we need to update our index method as well. Now, instead of creating object of SharePoint layer or SQL DB layer, we will use the object of iEmployee repository, for which we have just injected its dependency. So let's correct this. Change the object of class to object of interface. And let's delete reference of iConfiguration as well. We don't need it. So if you can see, within this controller, we haven't hard-coded our class. We are using references of our interface. So in future, if we need to support any other repository like Postgres or MySQL, we only need to inherit that class from our iEmployee repository interface and update our dependency injection container accordingly. All right, so let's run the program. And you can see it is coming to SQL DB layer class. And if I change the implementation to SharePoint layer, let's do that. And let's run the program once again. And you can see it is going to SharePoint layer class. So now our controller is loosely coupled in terms of employee repository implementation, right? So we successfully injected dependency of the employee layer in our project. So if I go to startup.cs class, apart from add singleton, we have add scope and add transients methods, which are there to provide more flexibility to the .NET Core dependency injection container. We will discuss them later. And that's it from this video. If you have any queries related to the content of this video, do ask me in comments. Till then, thanks for watching.